Hi, Year 4. Welcome to our second history lesson about ancient Egypt. Please write down the short date, which is the 14th of January 2021 or 14.01.21, and the LO, which is to learn how artifacts help us understand ancient Egyptian society. Just pause the video while you're writing those down, please. So now you've got your LO and date written down, let's just have a think. Do you remember when people started to live in Egypt? I mentioned it in the last lesson. It was 5000 BC. So that means there's been a society in Egypt for how many years? Can you remember how to work this out? So we need to take 5000 BC and do something with the year 2021 as well. Okay, so you've got to add them together. So just quickly do this in your head if you can. 5000 plus 2021. You should end up with the answer 7,021 years ago. Okay, so there's been a society in Egypt for 7,021 years. To start by having a look at this infographic, so that means a picture that gives us information. Despite it being so long ago, we know a lot about the ancient Egyptians. For example, which people were important and what jobs they did. So we've got a pyramid here. Obviously, the Egyptians built pyramids. Most of us already knew that. But a pyramid is a really good way of looking at society. And you might remember we used a similar model to look at the Romans as well. So I'm looking in the box. It says Egyptian social pyramid. This diagram shows how Egyptian society was shaped. Which groups formed the top two levels of the social pyramid? The bottom two levels, so that's two questions there. Which groups form the top two levels of the social pyramid? Well, if I look at the top, I can see the pharaoh is up there. And just underneath him, we've got viziers, priests, and nobles. So those would have been the people that gave the pharaoh advice. Very important and hopefully wise people. Down at the bottom, you've got slaves, very similar to something else we've seen, and peasants. Okay, so slaves and peasants at the bottom. So let's look at these questions on the left-hand side. You can answer these questions in your book. Please don't write the questions out, just use full sentence answers. So number one, how is this society like ancient Roman society? There's definitely similarities here. You should be able to spot. For example, the same kind of group in the same kind of place. Number two, what do you think scribes are? Now, you might have heard the word scribe before. You might be able to have a little look up here and look at what they're doing. Don't know if you can really see. Okay, so have a guess. Write down some kind of answer, even if you're not sure. What do you think scribes are? And number three, what are the peasants doing? So again, the peasants are here. What are they up to? So have a look at the pictures on this section of the pyramid. Right, just pause the video while you're answering those questions with full sentences, please. Okay, let's look at some answers. So how is this society like ancient Roman society? Hopefully you spotted that there were slaves at the bottom. I think that's the most obvious answer there. You may have picked up other things. You may have picked up something about the soldiers, because we also saw the Roman army. You may have mentioned that the pharaoh was like an emperor right at the top, or that there were officials who gave the emperor advice, just like in Egypt. Very similar. What do you think scribes are? Well, there's only one answer for this. If you got it right, well done. But if you had a guess, fantastic. They are writers. Okay, the Egyptians were very good at having writing on everything. They loved using it in education, labeling things, telling stories with it. So they would employ people to write all sorts of instructions and texts everywhere. What are the peasants doing? Okay, well, we can see down here there was some seeds being sown. We've got people looking after geese. We've got crops being cut. We have got a field being ploughed. So they are farming their own land. And they're near the bottom of the social pyramid. Okay, so well done if you got answers, and if you got them right, fantastic. If not, you can just correct them. So how do we know so much about people who lived so long ago, 7,000 years ago, and yet we know about them in detail? Well, the reason is because we go digging around carefully looking for clues. Archaeologists who study Egypt are known as Egyptologists, and they have uncovered so many clues about life in ancient Egypt that they've been able to work out what life was like in great detail. You can see archaeologists digging here. They don't just go in with a big spade or a digging machine. They very carefully sift through the earth with trowels or with their hands, or even with paintbrushes sometimes, looking for tiny fragments of pots or jewellery or bones, all sorts of things they can dig up to give clues. They fit the pieces together like a jigsaw puzzle, and that's how we get our information. If things get back to normal, and if we can, we will go to the British Museum and see the mummies. But until that's allowed, you can take a virtual tour of the galleries there. If you do, you will see that they have thousands of artefacts, so that's historical items from ancient Egypt. These are being preserved and cared for all of us to see. So the British Museum, just in central London, you can get there quite easily on the bus from here. You could go and see huge rooms full of Egyptian treasures, thousands of years old. But I want you to pause for a moment here. There is a big international argument about this. What do you think? Should we be allowed to keep Egypt's treasures in the UK? Now, on one hand, the British Museum in London has lots of money, so they know how to protect things and look after them and keep them going. And it's free for all of us to go and see them. So that means that millions of people get to see these treasures. But on the other hand, these things were taken from Egypt without really asking permission. So should we have them here at all, or should they be in an Egyptian museum? What do you think? Right, now we're going to look at artifacts. Can you write down the word artifacts and the definition, please? So artifacts, objects from history, that's what they are. And there are all sorts of artifacts, from coins to pots and all sorts of things. Whether you like them being in London or not, the fact is that we can learn a lot from the artifacts we have here from ancient Egypt. We can find out what kind of things people valued. Have a look at this picture of cat mummies. What can you work out about the Egyptian people? Try and write down 3 bullet points. What can you work out just by the fact that Egyptians used to mummify cats? Write down 3 ideas. What can you learn about Egyptian people? Just pause while you're doing that. So you've probably written down 2 or 3 things you can infer about the ancient Egyptians from the fact that they mummified cats. But just look at what Egyptologists have worked out about cats in ancient Egypt by using artifacts. Egyptians believed cats were magical creatures capable of bringing good luck to the people who housed them. To honour these treasured pets, wealthy families dressed them in jewels and fed them treats fit for royalty. When the cats died, they were mummified. As a sign of mourning, the cat owners shaved off their eyebrows and continued to mourn until their eyebrows grew back. Art from ancient Egypt shows statues and paintings of every type of feline. Feline is a Latin word for cats. Cats were so special that those who killed them, even by accident, were sentenced to death. Bastet was an Egyptian goddess who could become a cat, and you can see a picture of her there. So they've brought together all the pieces of the jigsaw. They found lots and lots of artifacts with cats on them, and they've worked out all of these things about how Egyptians felt about cats, even though it was all happening up to 7,000 years ago. Here's another artifact from ancient Egypt. It's a painting, and can you see what's going on in there? We have, obviously, a fight. We've got people with weapons. We've got dark-skinned people and light-skinned people. And if you look very carefully, you can see that the light-skinned people have slightly more glamorous clothes and armour. So I'm looking at this guy over here, and also this one. They seem to be wearing golden clothes and sort of quite nice dresses, whereas the darker skinned people are half naked and don't have such amazingly decorated shields. Okay, so we're sort of learning bits about this. Which ones do you think are the Egyptians, the dark skinned or the light skinned people? So I can tell you that the Egyptians are supposed to be the lighter skinned people. So we can learn maybe that the Egyptians were wealthier than some of their enemies, so they had more glamorous clothes and weapons. We might also learn something about the way that the darker skinned people, like particularly here and here, are lying down or thrown all over the place, whereas the Egyptians are standing strong and upright. And can you see there aren't as many of them, are there? We've got 1, 2, 3. Yeah, all defeating these other people. So we can learn that the Egyptians had wars. That's one thing. We can learn something about the weapons they used. We can learn a lot about what they wore. We can learn about who they fought, and we can learn that they felt they were great warriors, because look, we've got 3 Egyptians beating a lot of enemies here and doing it with a smile on their face by the looks of things. Here's another artifact. This is a relief carving. Relief means it's carved as if it's coming out of a flat wall. And if you were to go to Egypt ever on a visit, if you went to the Valley of the Kings or somewhere like that, you would be able to see these kind of carvings are still preserved. And also you can go and see them at the museum as well. So I'm just focusing on 3 things about this carving. We have some kind of head of a bird, but it looks like the body of a person. So this is a god. So we can learn that the god is doing something. The god has the head and maybe the characteristics of a bird. I'm not sure which bird it is. We can see here that something's happening. So I can see that they're pouring some sort of liquid or oil onto this person's head. Now this is the emperor here. So the god is anointing the emperor. We can also see that the god is wearing arm bracelets. So that tells us something about the Egyptians liking jewellery. So even here we can learn quite a bit about how the Egyptians felt that their pharaohs were anointed by gods. And we can learn what they thought their gods looked like. Okay, so basically I just want you to do this quiz. See how you get on. I want you to write down the answers. So 1 to 10 in your margin. Write down numbers 1 to 10. And then pause the video for a few minutes while you answer each question. Have a go at every single one. And in a moment we'll look through the answers. So question 1. What are archaeologists who study Egypt called? Number 2. Where in the UK can you find thousands of Egyptian artefacts? Number 3. Did the Egyptians used to put A, makeup, or B, jewellery on their cats? Number 4. Which 2 animals did we see connected with gods? Number 5. How did the painting let us know that the Egyptians felt like they were great warriors? Number 6. What sort of person was the most important in Egyptian society? Number 7. What sort of person was the least important? Number 8. Name 2 things that cat owners did when their pets died. Number 9. Is an artifact A fact about art, or B, an object from history? And finally, number 10, what was a scribe? Okay, so no cheating. Give yourself a big tick if you got any of these answers. Number 1, you should have had Egyptologists. Number 2, the British Museum, London. Number 3, the answer was B, they put jewellery on their cats. Number 4, we saw that a cat and a bird were connected with gods from these artefacts today. Number 5, the Egyptians were shown winning in the painting. Number 6, what sort of person was the most important? It was the pharaoh. And number 7, the least important was slaves. Number 8, 2 things cat owners did when their cats died was shave their eyebrows off and mummified the cat. Number 9, is an artefact a fact about art or an object from history? It's B, an object from history. And number 10, what was a scribe? It was a writer. If you've still got some time left, it would be great if you did some artwork now. So design something like the god that we saw on that relief carving. So the body of a warrior, maybe showing the arm bracelets or the kind of clothes that they were wearing. So you could go back through the video and have a look at the pictures of the warriors and then show it with the head of the bird with a long beak. If you can do some art and send it in, take a picture and email it to the school, I'd love to see it. Okay, I hope you enjoyed the lesson and I will talk to you more about history next week.